slept with the right person. Thanks, Dewey.
You got it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Dewey, for inviting me. I am a professional storyteller, but I predominantly tell stories to children. So I've done a few of these story slams in different locations, and it was more kind of like a chit-chat banter. So when Dewey gave us the topic of surprises, I was perplexed, for I am not a surprise kind of a girl. Having received the occasional puppy or beautiful expensive gift from that lovely boyfriend I really didn't want, no surprises seemed mundane and rather ordinary. But when I really began to ponder surprises, an old memory came back to me. In my early 20s, about 23, 24, I met a musician. I was living in LA, and he was slightly older, about 14 years slightly older. Having had 2 marriages, I was young and beautiful, and he was very much not into permanent long-term relationships. So when you're in your 20s, these are conditions and terms, ladies, that we can agree to. Plus, we traveled, and I had my own job, and I had my own work, and he was on tour quite often, and we had a perfectly ideal life, and which I thought. But about 5 years later, I began to realize I was missing something in my life, and the pressure of that maternal calling and wanting permanency and wanting longevity and wanting relatedness to create something other than just a really great horror movie weekend, sex-filled rock and roll night was more of what my instincts and my nature were longing for. And so when I posed the question of us moving in together, he immediately went, well, I've done that, and clearly 2 divorces later, and child rearing and child support is just not what I'm into, babe. You know what I mean. And so I thought, yeah, he's right. At 32, I still have quite a few more years to ponder that. And he went off on tour, and I went into my regular routine of being self-sufficient. His tour was just about ending, and he was going to be ending that particular tour in San Juan Capistrano, which is about 2.5 hours out of LA. And I thought, dang, I'm going to meet him in that great little hotel that we've been to before. I'm going to buy something at Victoria's Secret. I'm going to surprise him. But I wasn't quite sure when his show ended, because musicians, if you know this, they tend to sleep all day, go to the particular location that they're working at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, have a sound check, have dinner, get ready for a 10 or 11 o'clock show. So the schedule was slightly off, and I knew I'd be getting out of work about 5 o'clock on a Friday night. I wanted to show up at the gig in my little dandy outfit, you know, give him the look from the audience, do the girl thing that I was rather good at. So I called his agent and said, hey, just remind me what hotel he's at so that I can drop off my bag. Hesitant. Well, I'll call you right back, Annette. Click. So about 25 minutes later, I get a phone call. And the phone call went something like this. He's really tied up. He's got some record people there. I've been with this man for 5 years, almost 6 at this point. I knew the routine. Been there, watched all of the other musician friends warn off their wives and their girlfriends. So I knew immediately my instinct was up. And I said, no, something's wrong. I want to talk to him, I want to talk to him now. And the agent, as agents are supposed to do, are always that buffer between the real world and the rock and roll life. That's what they get paid the big bucks to do. And of course, bring girls and drugs and sex. But anyway, about 35 minutes later, I get another phone call. And now it's from his manager. And his manager and I knew each other very well. We had shared many a dinner, we had shared many a family event, and his manager said, Annette, he's got another girl on the road with him. Surprise! It threw me. I'd always been baby to him. That was our nickname. He called me baby, and he was king. And I had always expected honesty and truthfulness from him. He didn't have to lie to me because I was the real world to him. I was that solidness that was authentic and real. And when I met his friends and, you know, I didn't know who Don Henley was, and I'm like, what band do you play in? Hello, I'm a Latina, I don't know about rock and roll. When I met Jackson Brown and Daryl Hannah, I knew who Daryl was because, of course, she had just done Splash. So I loved her, and I'm like, what band do you play in? And, you know, when I met all these famous rock and rollers, my boyfriend loved the fact that I didn't know any of them because it meant that I wasn't impressed with who they were. So I expected the same amount of respect, honesty. I was devastated. At 32, I had been replaced by a 23-year-old on the road. So I did what any good girlfriend did. I had the keys to his condo. So I drove, sobbing and weeping, went into the condo, opened up his closet, and admired his entire collection of Zoran cashmere sweaters. $400 to $500 a pop. I thought, fucking A, yeah, they all belong to me. But no, I didn't take them. Then I went to his studio and I admired all of that equipment he had, you know, the latest recording equipment and the latest technology, and I thought, wow, what would a can of beer do to all that? But I didn't do that. I didn't rip or destroy or break anything in his home, but what I took were the most valued things, our pictures. He had a collection, I'm not talking porno, he had a collection of pictures that we would take at all sorts of odd hours of the morning because we were night owls. So from Monday through Friday, I worked a regular job, 9 to 5, that girl Friday, and then on the weekends, I stayed up until 4 to 5 a.m. in the morning and slept until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then my clock managed to change sometime about 3 o'clock on Monday afternoon. But I went and collected every single one of our pictures. The ones that we had taken in Carmel, the ones we had taken in Mexico on many of our weekend excursions, the ones in Chicago, the ones when we were in New York, and when he performed in all the different cities that he had taken me to, and all the different locations. And I took them back to my apartment, and I cut the motherfucker out of them because I looked good in the other part. So I placed those there, and then I did what any rational, normal 32-year-old woman would do. I put them all in the sink, and I poured some alcohol on them, and I set them on fire, and I wept and sobbed! And then the fire alarm went off in my apartment. And then my landlord came, and I had to explain to him that I just heard that my boyfriend had cheated on me. And he said, honey, last week some girl set the couch her boyfriend had bought for her on fire in the apartment. This is nothing. So, years later, I went off and met the true love of my life in the most peculiar and unusual place, Puerto Rico, married him, and all of a sudden I got a phone call from this particular musician. And he had said he had terminal lung cancer, stage 3. And the one thing he had done for a year and a half was try to find me. Because he had A, written a love ballad in Spanish for me, and B, he wanted to make amends for what he thought was one of the biggest mistakes of his life. Surprise! That is my story.